Mr. President, I'm happy to file today our friend from Maine, our colleague from New Jersey, and you, Mr. President, as the senator from Louisiana, and actually pointing to something we can agree on. People are always saying to me, and I know to my colleagues when we go home, can't you guys, gals, ever agree on anything? Well, as it turns out, a number of us agree that state and local governments could use some help. And there's some additional help beyond that which we've already provided. And that's a good thing. We don't have to pit blue states against red states. We can actually work together, and in this case we are. Very few of us actually come here and start our first elected job was being a U.S. Senator. Some, but not a lot. A number of people, former mayors, former governors, former representatives, but every now and then somebody slips through without having ever run for elective office again. But I'm a former state treasurer. People call me a recovering governor, Mr. President, but I'm really a recovering state treasurer. I was elected state treasurer when I was 29. And when I was elected state treasurer and took my oath, our state had the worst credit rating in the country. I was elected in '76, the same year that a Republican named Pete DuPont was elected governor of our state. Turned out to be a terrific governor, and at a time when we needed one. And he's a good mentor for me and someone I always looked up to, and I hope I was a good partner to him and Democrats and Republicans in the legislature to pull our state out of a real mess. Not only do we have the worst credit rating in the country in that year, mid-1977 actually, but we had the worst credit rating, we had no pension fund, we had no rainy day fund, we had the lowest startup rate of new businesses of any state in America. We couldn't balance our budgets if we had to. And in order to actually have money to spend, we issued revenue anticipation notes. And I asked I got to the state treasurer's office and said, what is a revenue anticipation note? And they said that is a way the state borrows money until tax monies come in the following April so that we can actually pay payroll and pensions and stuff like that. I said, you are kidding. And they said, no, we are not. And that was then, this is now. When Pete DuPont was our governor and I was treasurer, he had a bipartisan legislature, House and Senate, split between Democrats and Republicans. But we created a rainy day fund, never invaded it. We fully amortized our pension fund. We had no pension fund. We fully amortized it within about 10 years. Did all kinds of things, all kinds of budget reforms in order to get us on the right track. Now, I've heard some of my colleagues say that states got themselves in a mess. They're going to have to get out of it so they can file for bankruptcy. They are badly managed. Let me just say, my state was AAA state. We got an AAA credit rating when I was governor, and we never lost it. We've never lost it even to this day. Most states are better run fiscally than the federal government. And you only have to look at the way we spend money around here, not just in the middle of a pandemic. Look at the year before the pandemic of how much our nation's deficit was in debt was increased. But even fiscally responsible, well-managed states like Delaware and some other states that are represented on this floor right here are finding themselves in a situation that one could not have imagined just a few months ago. That's especially true when we have an administration that's simultaneously asking state and local governments to shoulder the burden of responding to the coronavirus. Leader McConnell and Secretary Mnuchin say that states don't need more money because they haven't used the coronavirus relief funds that Congress provided in the CARES Act. Well, unfortunately, that's just not true. A survey conducted by the National Association of State Budget Officers shows that states have already allocated nearly 75% of these funds already to fight the pandemic and help struggling families and small businesses through this crisis. And as states across this country, Mr. President, see a resurgence in infection rates, the costs of addressing the health and economic crisis are not going down, they're going up. And at the same time that the cost of addressing this pandemic have skyrocketed, businesses have shuttered, tourism and commerce have come in many places to a standstill. That means that hundreds of billions of dollars in lost revenues for states and local governments have occurred. Delaware is certainly not alone. So let me be very clear. This is not a red state or a blue state problem. It's a United States problem. It's not a consequence of poor management either. And over the past couple of months, weeks, I've had conversations, literally, as my colleagues know, with dozens of them on both sides of the aisle about what states and local communities across our country are facing as a result of COVID-19. In those conversations with my Democrat and Republican colleagues, time and time again, I've heard a familiar refrain. The pandemic has caused state and local government revenues to plummet in a way that none of us have ever experienced or could have foreseen. Income tax revenues have fallen as unemployment numbers reach unprecedented levels over the course of just a few months. And delaying federal tax deadlines, while it was the right thing to do, has wreaked havoc on the ability of states to balance their budget. Sales tax collections and revenues from tourism, gas taxes, tolls have dried up as the virus has compelled many people to just stay at home. And states highly dependent on oil and gas revenues, as the presiding officer state is, have been doubly hit by a pandemic and the turmoil in global energy markets. Unlike the federal government, state and local governments have to balance their budgets. And this means the governors, state legislators, and local officials, mayors, and city and county councils have had no choice but to make deep cuts that will inevitably hurt the ability of their communities to recover. Since the pandemic hit our country, state and local governments alone have lost 1.5 million jobs. Let me say that again. Since the pandemic hit our country, state and local governments alone have lost 1.5 million jobs. That's not private sector jobs. That's not other jobs, not federal government jobs. That's just state and local, county jobs, state, teachers, firefighters, police, and more. This staggering statistic is bad enough on its own, but what does it mean if you aren't one in every 8 American workers who is employed by state or local government? Here's what it means. Cuts to education budgets means larger class sizes. It means fewer bus drivers. It means fewer custodians at a time when schools are struggling to figure out how they will reopen safely this fall. I talked earlier this week to a number of our finest state superintendents, school superintendents in Delaware. And we talked about, they're struggling with how to reopen schools. And as it turns out, they're going to have to hire more bus drivers if schools reopen. More bus drivers because kids are going to be separated. And they have to, as they separate kids, can't put as many kids on a school bus. They're going to have to hire substitute teachers. And if somebody gets sick, they call in, unable to come to work, they're going to have to hire substitute teachers and pay for them as well. And nurses is the same way, to be there to help administer, whether it's taking people's temperatures or administering tests and that kind of thing. We're going to need more health professionals in our schools rather than less. But cuts to first responder budgets mean people must wait longer for EMTs and firefighters to arrive during emergency situations. Cuts to transportation budgets means canceled or delayed transportation infrastructure projects, and fewer construction jobs just as we're in the middle of a summer construction season. These cuts impact all of us and create a ripple effect across the broader economy. That's why economists across the political spectrum, including Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, agree that state and local budget cuts will weigh down our path to economic recovery, not just for a couple of weeks, not just for a couple of months, for years to come. In fact, based on evidence from the last recession, one recent economic report found that every dollar in cuts costs the overall economy $1.50 to $2. And that's one reason why the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has called for additional federal aid for states and for cities. The Chamber also recognizes that this lost revenue will force officials at the state and local level to either miss payments or raise taxes in order to make up the shortfall. We know that this is impacting every part of our nation. And the longer we wait to get much needed assistance to our state and local governments, the more our communities will suffer and the more at risk we put our entire economy. We're here, we're sort of like almost in overtime. We're looking, in fact, we are in overtime when it comes to the supplemental unemployment insurance benefits having expired. But we don't have time to wait. Let's pass long overdue assistance. Let's pass it so that our hometowns and our states don't take an even bigger hit, a hit that we can't afford, but a hit that's avoidable. And with that, I want to yield to my colleagues. Some of my colleagues are here to present their own perspectives, and we look forward to hearing from them. The first one, right out of the starting block, former governor of New Hampshire, and like me, a recovering governor, and a terrific United States Senator, Maggie Hassan. I'm happy to yield the floor to Senator Maggie Hassan from